Alright guys, it's Jahlon with the Paradox Gaming Network, and today we're going to continue Ash's 101 on nodes. This is the Introduction to Nodes Part 3, the Vassal System. A lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is new stuff, previously not seen before. Now what I am going to say is we're talking about some really in-the-weeds stuff, so if you haven't watched Parts 1 and 2, the video for Part 1 has just appeared up in the corner. Or if you feel like you want to go and read about it instead of watching a video, you can do that at ashes101.com. I have the text guide up on the website. I'll also put a link directly to it in the description below. So as we've talked about in other videos, nodes are always going to be trying to exert their influence on other nodes. So the vassal system allows one node to exert more influence on its neighbors than it could when it was level 2. Up to level 2, a node can block the growth of its neighbors. At level 3, it's actually going to enslave lower ranking nodes. Now, I automatically know right away that we don't have the full mechanics on this, and I know you guys will have questions, and I may not have answers. But if you have questions, leave them below. If I can't answer them, then what I do is I roll them all up I try to gather everybody's questions, and then occasionally I like to ping Margaret and Steven with some complicated questions so I can get more than one answer at a time. So let's talk about the Vassal system graphically. Now remember, these are my graphics. These are not a direct relation to what Intrepid plans. I'm just a big fan of visual learning sometimes. So here you go. Here is the way a world, a server, a particular part of Vera has mapped itself out. You have nodes of different stages. And what you can see here is this city. This city has a zone of influence. Now, a zone of influence is probably more centered around the city, but in order to do this graphically, I chose to do it this way, so just roll with it. But inside of that city's zone of influence, there's a lot of things going on. That expedition keeps its zone of influence. That village has its own zone of influence. That town has its own zone of influence. So there's overlapping zones of influence because of the parent-vassal system. Now, as a pop quiz to make sure you were paying attention during the other videos, why is there nothing in this particular box, and why is it impossible for anything to go in that particular box? Because the expedition is exerting its will against that particular area. Expedition's level 1, so a level 0 can't go to level 1 as long as it has that influence against it. That's going to be important because that's going to be the driving decision for a lot of things and a lot of content. Before we get to that, let's talk about vassals and parents. A node can be both a vassal and a parent. Vassal nodes give excess experience to their parent node and are able to have their own vassals as long as they fit within the parent node's zone of influence. Now, this comes from Know Your Nodes, the basics. I do have a question into Intrepid on this. I haven't gotten it yet. Hopefully I do get it before publication. I'll recut this part. So I know, trust me guys, I know you're going to have a question about that statement. I already have it. So let's talk about this parent-child relationship, or this parent-vassal relationship. So as you can see, these nodes all on the left side of the map, these are all vassals up the food chain, and these are all parents down the food chain. Now this is important because it takes a lot of experience to keep these cities or these metropolis nodes from going into atrophy. We talked about atrophy in a couple of places. So the parent-vassal system really revolves around, 1, the upward mobility of experience. If a node is capped, it will first pay off its atrophy, and then it's going to send surplus experience up to the parent. So what you see here is you got an expedition, really small level 1 node. It's not going to, do much. What it can do is, you got people working here, and it's going to fill up its experience bar. Now, when it fills up its experience bar, it would try to go to an encampment because there's not an encampment shown blocking it. But in this regard, what I'm going to say is it can't, for whatever reason, it can't go to encampment. So when that XP bar goes to 100%, it will start funneling up surplus XP to the village stage. Now, every day that encampment is going to check, it's going to pay off its daily debt. It's going to stop it from going into atrophy. It's going to send that XP up to the village. Now the village is going to do the same thing. The village is going to fill up its XP bar, and then it's going to pay off its daily atrophy, and then it's going to send XP up to the town. The town will do the same thing for the city. Now, say for example, the expedition, whatever reason it can't grow. Say there's an encampment just to the south that's blocking its growth. If that encampment would be removed, then that expedition would use its experience. Then it would level to encampment before it starts feeding XP up to the next stage. So I don't want people to think that the parent nodes are stealing growth potential. What it is that the vassal offers it up after it's full. So instead of the experience going to waste, it just sends it up the food chain. The vassal system also revolves around taxes. I'm going to look at a little bit different of a map here because I've included the regional castle, because regional castles are also involved in the taxes. Now remember, from part 2, the node sets the mayor of the local node sets the node's tax rates. So what's going to happen is that mayor is going to generate a pool of money from taxes. But the city, the parent, is going to reach into that pocket and it's going to pull some of those green dollars. It's going to pull some of those green dollars into its pool. But it's also going to generate its own pool of money. So what's going to happen is the regional castle is going to decide it's going to reach into those two pools of money, a little bit of that green pool that's flowing up from the town. It's going to reach into the castle or the city's gold money and pull a little bit up into its pool. But the castle also taxes every single node in the area. So it doesn't need to necessarily have a direct flow. There is not going to be a direct parent-vassal relationship between the castle and the city. That's not how that works. The castle is the monarch, is the nobility of the region. Now you're going to notice I deliberately put in the lower right-hand corner, you're going to see an encampment in a village that are on a white background. They don't have money above them. That's because these are different regions. You see the different color codes? That regional castle does not have the ability to tax outside of its region. So the parent-vassal system between the nodes also has a little bit of touch point with the regional castle. The reason why I chose to do it this way for taxes will become clear a little bit later when we talk about wars. Now, what this means is that regional castle has a big pool of money. Your city, your parent city, would also have a big pool of money. We're going to see how money can be used later. I also want to talk about work orders. This was kind of some new information that we got on the stream on nodes. So what you have is you have your vassal relationship between all these nodes. Now, if the city needs something, the city is not self-sufficient. There are, I guess, we don't have a lot of details on this yet, but what I'm going to say is there are tasks below a city, like not us. We're noble blood up here. We're aristocracy. We're not going to do those tasks. So the city needs to send out work orders. The town, same thing, has to send out work orders. The village, same thing, has to send out work orders. So it looks like Intrepid has some sort of plan to make sure that the guy living in the village has some value to the guy living in the town. And it looks like there's going to be an interdependency, just like there should be. Just like a feudal system should be. A city doesn't do agrarian things. Rural areas do agrarian things. I'm going to be willing to bet some of this is going to have to do with fishing tasks or mining tasks or lumbering tasks, processing tasks, things that you wouldn't necessarily see in a urban developed city, things that you would see more in a village or an expedition or an encampment. We don't have a lot of details on the intricacies of the work orders, but we do know that the system exists. What I do want to focus on today, really on the vassal system, is the diplomatic states. What we got in the blog was bound by the diplomatic states of the parent node. They are subject to the government, alliances, wars, taxes, and trade of the parent node, and are able to receive federal aid from them. So what caught me off guard with this, the really big one that I wasn't really too excited about, was the war one. So your parent node declares war against another node, and that node happens to be a parent node. So now you got your node and all of its vassals versus the enemy and all of their vassals, and then let slip the dogs of war, and we got war everywhere. So I actually asked this question directly to Steven, and I said, from the live stream, vassal nodes adopt the diplomatic relationships of the parent node. Does this mean if my node, node 1, goes to war versus node 99, then all of node 1's children are at war against node 99 and all her children? Answer number 3. As it stands currently, that does not relate to war, but most other diplomatic systems, yes. Now, I got that, and then I still wasn't satisfied, so Stephen was gracious enough to hook me up with an answer. While vassal nodes do not share the open world flag for combat with their parent nodes' active wars, vassals are, however, prevented from initiating trade agreements with nodes that are actively at war with the parent node. So what you have is you have these two nodes, they're at war with each other. This vassal node of one of the parents wants to open up a trade agreement with the parent node, and the system says, no, you can't do that. Dad's at war with that node. You're a child. You're not allowed to disobey dad. So that's how that one works. I also have a theory on this. That's why there's a big cover sheet. It says Jahlon's theory on this. I don't want anybody to think this is fact. What you're going to have is, imagine that this is the border disputes, and you're going to have wars everywhere. People are going to be at wars. All right? What I'm thinking is that if these two parent nodes declare peace, then this is going to get rid of all those wars. It's not good for business. You know, war is sometimes good for business. Sometimes peace is good for business. And maybe it's not the peace state. Maybe it's the alliance state. As long as these two nodes are all in the same region, they may be able to form an alliance. Again, we don't even know what we don't know. But a lot of people have been saying we're not getting new information. We are getting new information, but we know Stephen likes to hold it close to the chest, so we're just not getting all the details. We also know that you're bound by the diplomatic states of the parent node. A vassal node cannot declare war on their parent node or any of its vassals. So number one, people are upset about this because it means no civil war. But people are also upset because of this. Say the members of one guild are living in the town and the members of another guild are living in the village and they just want to be spiteful to each other and they want to have a war. The system says, no, you can't do that. Dad, the city, he says, no, children, you're not allowed to fight in the living room. I said no. So that idea goes away. But what we also have is Stephen has alluded to subterfuge a lot, espionage a lot. So over here in the left-hand corner, you have this village, and it wants to be a town. That mayor wants to be the mayor of a town because if he can become the mayor of a town, he may be able to figure out a way to become the mayor of a city if he gets rid of that city. He wants to be the next power player in the region. So he's stuck. The village is permanently stuck. It can never become a town. It has a neighbor that's a town. So what we talked about in Nodes Part 1, that blockout feature is in effect. So now the mayor has to not use brute force. He's got to be spy versus spy, man. He's got to think, how do I get rid of that town? Well, I'm going to hire some outside mercenaries. I'm going to bring some people in outside of my parent-vassal relationship, and I'm going to get them to remove this town for me. When this town goes away, the block goes away, and now that, very crafty mayor can get his node to level up. Now what I'm going to say is, yes, you're going to see this happen all the time in Ashes. This is the baseline of what's going to be happening. I'm also going to say, don't get caught. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is federal aid, including castle assistance. Now, we have next to no details about the federal aid and what one node can do for another, what the parent node can do for another. But I want to talk about and tie up a lot of the intricacies of the regional system and the node system. And the first is you're going to see I've moved that town over a little bit for this example because I talk about border skirmishes. And what you'll see is you've got two different regions by color. Now, I said in the second video, border disputes between regions, because nodes are the pawns of kings and queens. The regional castle wants to ensure that it has the biggest collection of the highest ranking nodes because of taxes, because the guild leader of that regional castle gets to spend a portion of those taxes any way he wants. Now you'll notice on the white side of the border, that village it can't grow to a town because it's blocked out by the town in the sand colored zone. Couple of key points here. Those colored regions, the castle regions, are fixed and static. They do not change. Zones of influence are fluid and dynamic. They can cross over regional borders. So what happens is the White King sends out his scouts along the border and he says, how can I increase my holdings? And this scout comes across this situation and says, this this town is a prime target because it's blocking out a village. If that town were removed, that village might grow to a town. We don't know what's going on all around in all the other nodes, all the other zones of influence, but there's a potential that by moving that town out of the way, that village could become a town, that encampment could become a village, and the white monarch is suddenly going to see more tax revenue. Well, obviously, the regional lord doesn't want this to happen. The mayor of the town doesn't want this to happen. So the siege banner gets dropped. The town knows that since it's a town, it has a siege declare time of 3 days. So it has about 3 days to figure out what they can do. Well, unfortunately for this town is made up of merchants and farmers. There's not a lot of PvPers here. So the mayor makes a trip up to the city to appeal to his parent node and says, you know, my local lord, I don't have PvPers. Parent, same thing. He wants that tax money. He wants that income. That city's trying to become a metropolis. It doesn't want to lose a town as a vassal. Because remember, he's not just going to lose the town. He's going to lose the node completely. So he'll probably only get an expedition or an encampment built back up. So the mayor of the city says, don't worry, I got some PvPers. I'm gonna support you. Well, the other thing is that the king's not sleeping up in his castle. Your regional king, he's got plans. He's gonna support you. Now that doesn't mean he's gonna march his army all the way down to your node. He may not be able to do that. His army may be occupied, but he can help you with money. Because remember, he's got that pile of money. That doesn't mean he can spend all of it on himself. And he certainly doesn't want to lose what he's getting. So he's gonna help you out. He's gonna help you out a little subtle. They're not gonna see it coming. So what we do is we get to siege day, right? And Jahlon, the first of his name, has spent a ton of money on this. He has put money into gates. He has put money into walls. We don't have the mechanics on that, but we know that that's happened. Any available dollar that he can, he's put into this town. He loves his people. So these guys show up and they're ready to fight, and they bring with them some pretty basic siege equipment. That's all they had. That's all they thought they were going to need. They're thinking, "Oh man, this is farmers and merchants. We got this." And you know, they're not stupid. They're expecting some PvPers to sign up. There's probably a PvP or two in town. They know that local people can sign up for defense. But what they weren't counting on is the quality of siege equipment schematics that the king authorized for this fight. And he wasn't playing. It's a border town. He doesn't want to lose it. He also, remember these guys? He hired some mercenaries. Now, I want you guys to look at the characters on the screen. I talked once about revenge. Look at the guys on the left. Look at the guys on the right. Maybe this siege isn't about a border dispute. Maybe this is about that node that got destroyed and this is just revenge. But either way, the king's interference or the king's support of this has saved the town. These guys get sent packing, and now that town has immunity from another siege based on its level. It can't be sieged again. There are other forms of aid. Like I said, there's walls, there's gates, there's mercenaries, there's schematics of siege weapons. There's no doubt more. We just don't have them yet. I will say that I will talk more about castles in part 4 or 5 of this series, or I may do it as its own video, because there's a lot of things that castles do for the region more than just aid prior to a siege. There's dials that the king gets to turn and change the region a little bit. So I'll get to all of that, but I wanted to give you a walking example of how you shouldn't be afraid that you're a citizen to a monarch. That monarch can actually end up saving your ass when the time comes. That's it for the Vassal system, guys. This is the first time I'm doing the Vassal system as an Ashes 101. So ask a lot of questions and I'll get them answered. Wherever you ask them, I'll answer them because I owe you that. And on my webpage, if you guys ask good questions, I'll include those on the webpage because that's easy for me to update. When the time comes, I will do a Ashes 101 reboot of this video because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of information in the days to come. And it's easier to do these videos broken up into small chunks because then I can just redo a part instead of having to redo a 45-minute video. So that's it, guys. If you got specific questions, go ahead and ask me at Jahlon #0001 on Discord. You can swing by my Twitch anytime, even if I'm not streaming Ashes, because nobody can right now. I'll go into depth about Ashes of Creation questions. And special thanks to my sponsors. I don't have a giveaway going on right now. One just ended, but I will get another giveaway up soon. But as always, big thank you to my sponsors. Without these guys, I couldn't give away money, and I like giving away money. Everybody loves money. So you guys take care, and then be on the lookout for Introduction to Nodes Part 4 and 5. There's a lot more stuff we haven't covered yet. If you remember, this is the Vassal System. This is the continuation of Part 2, talking about nodes at level 3. We still need to talk about nodes at level 4, 5, 6, and more benefits of nodes. You guys take care.
Hey, where are you going? You're not done yet. See these videos? There's videos up here to watch. You gotta go over here. Hit the chibi. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the webpage. And I'll see you guys on Twitch.